This is the true story of an ordinary man who came to live an extraordinary life. Against all the odds, he survives some of the most ferocious battles the world has ever seen. At night, he remembers the bayonets, the bullets, and the bombs. Now, aged 92, he is ready to speak. Listen, then, to Victor.
There are voices in the halls, there are whispers in the walls. Come on, boys, it's graduation day, and the ghost of 39 will be slipping across the line, singing now, it's graduation day.
Our story begins in London. The year is 1937. The city is drenched and the sky is clotted and yellow. It is 20 years since the Great War, and strings of khaki ghosts still hang above the rooftops, one for every chimney pot. We find Victor Gregg standing in the rain on Horse Guards Parade. It is his 18th birthday, and he is poor and sodden and hungry.
I remember the day well. Pelting down with rain it was. I remember it now. It was cold, raining, and then this geezer comes up behind me, all smart, big red band, all their medals highly polished, not a hair out of place. Well, son, like that, do you? Want a cup of tea and a bun? All on the house, you ain't got to play nothing. Come on. And you trot over the road into New Scotland Yard, under the arch, up the steps. No, they just pointed me to two blokes who were sitting at a desk and asked me my name, that's all. The address and my date and when I was born. And was I sure I was 18? Yeah, I'm 18 today. Good lad, good lad. You see those two gentlemen over there with the white coats on? Just go and have a chat with them, will you? So you go over there, bend down, cough, you're all right. Yeah, well, he's holding your balls, isn't he? Didn't get the tea and a bun. Next, please. They've done you.
Did you want to join the army?
It was always crossed my mind, for the simple reason that in those days, in the 30s, you always had these big placards up all over the place. Join the army and see the world. And of course it shows a nice shining beach with a couple of dusky birds on it, and there's some squatty there enjoying the benefits of palm trees, coconuts falling on the ground, all that bullshit.
When you're walking home then with the railway warrant in your hand, and the penny drops or the king's shilling drops, and you realise what's gone on in the last 45 minutes.
Yeah, you begin to worry what you're going to tell your mum. No, I better not say anything.
You didn't say a word?
No, I didn't say a word, no. Crept out the next morning and wrote her a letter when I got there.
Victor watches London as it slips sideways from view. Raindrops cling to the glass before being dragged away by the wind.
I don't think that I would have spent much time reminiscing about things. I'm just travelling somewhere where I haven't been before.
But you're not thinking, I've joined the army now, I'm going to have a gun put in my hand, I'm going to have to shoot someone, I might get shot myself, it's dangerous.
No, I never thought of that at all.
Never bothered you?
No, it never occurred to me. It's only when you get in it and they start training you. They stick a rifle with a sword on the end of it and tell you to stick it in a bag of straw.
Sticking a bayonet into a bag of straw, how does that even relate at all to the reality of sticking a bayonet into another man?
No. I don't think we're natural psychopaths. It's not natural. See, the army's task is to train you to be a psychopath, to kill people. They've got to condition you to be a murderer.
Christmas Eve, 1938. HMS Hampshire sits in Southampton Dock. Along its rails, 680 men stare out at the warehouses and cranes. This is the last many of them will see of England for 7 years. Longer, perhaps. The engines throb beneath their feet and the boat sails away, shrouded in a thick blanket of snow. England fades to a dim, dirty white, and then disappears altogether.
Someone whispered that the tide was turning as this boat was pushing back from shore. Someone said that they saw freedom burning. We can't see Southampton anymore.
you think if you'd have known that the Second World War was on its way at that point, you'd have run a mile?
No, because in the end it turned out beneficial to me anyway. It prepared me that first year of 1940, the end of 1939, in Palestine, where we had shots coming in. No, that prepares you for it in a slow sort of apprenticeship, whereas if I'd waited to be called up, dead.
Victor is on his stomach in the dusty outskirts of Beder Fom, a map reference scratched into the sand just south of Benghazi. He watches as a black fly swings in the stifling air, struggling to stay afloat. It stutters and then drops to the ground, like a rock. These are Victor's last few breaths before his war begins. Mussolini's troops are sweeping towards him across the sand. 5 of them for every British soldier.
There was a great mass of them, and we had nothing. Nearer and nearer. They had all these aeroplanes, hundreds of tanks, thousands of men, and their artillery was pretty good. And there's our little puny force there, spread out, so it's all systems go there. The Italians are getting mowed down as they approach. They fall back, then they'd have another go, and then another go. It's like a football crowd coming out of Chelsea on Saturday afternoon. Disorganised, well, I've got to say rabble, because that's the word that occurs to me.
When you've got your gun and you're pointing it towards a young man who's running towards you...
Oh, you don't notice him as a young man.
What is he in that second before you shoot him?
He's somebody who's trying to kill you. You don't think about it.
How many men do you think you personally killed during those 48 hours?
I ain't got a clue. Hundreds.
Hundreds?
Hundreds. If you take it as the prime result of having a Vickers or a Bren lined up and you're firing it into a body of men, you don't know how many men you've hit, but you know you've hit quite a lot.
The Italian soldiers press closer and closer in waves which begin to lap at the British lines. And then the riflemen are engulfed completely.
That was our first real baptism of what real war was about. Blokes screaming, shouting. You hear vehicles burning, exploding.
Can you remember the first time you killed someone close quarters?
No, I can't. No, I can't. All you're aware of is if you don't do it to him, he's going to do it to you. If you've got any sense, you never knife a person facing him, because the blood will come all over you. Your heart is a pump, pumping like mad. Somebody cuts an artery in it, the blood all spurts out, like a bloody hose pipe. You go behind them. Yeah, and the blood all goes into nothing, doesn't it? Your job is to get him, your job is to kill him. It's all done in a fraction of a second. If you don't think about it, horrible, isn't it?
I'm not sure I could do it. I don't think I'd be strong enough.
Yeah, you would. You take it from me. You'd get accustomed to it. You would survive it. Because that's the way we work as human people. You put in a situation, you might not be used to it, but you would come round to it.
The young soldiers might have hoped for a mere momentary flash of violence, but the Battle of Beder Fom continues for 2 days. When it's over, the British have won.
You would see masses of dead men, masses of them lying on the ground. You just sit down, you don't cheer, you don't start hugging each other, you don't see it as a victory. You feel sorry for the sods who are still kicking, who are still dying and screaming. You certainly don't feel remorse. What you've done, you've taken your first step into insanity. The first thing we used to do, if once anything like that happened, you put a brew on. You got a 4-gallon petrol tin. If you've got water, if you're lucky, and then you light a fire with another petrol tin with petrol and sand and oil. Put it on that, throw the tea leaves in, and then throw the powdered milk in, and then throw the sugar in, and it's lovely.
Don't shed your tears for us, old England. We'll be back as soon as war allows. And for those who won't be coming home, old England, Their hearts will sing for you beneath the foreign ground.
El Alamein, Egypt. General Bernard Monty Montgomery, the new commander-in-chief of the 8th Army in North Africa, sends an inspiring message to his troops.
I want to impress on everyone that the bad times are over. They are finished. Our mandate from the Prime Minister is to destroy the Axis forces in North Africa.
Well, we'd heard it all before.
What I have done is to get over to you the atmosphere in which we will now work and fight.
We didn't think the Lord God was going to help us in any way.
You must see to it that this new atmosphere permeates right down through the 8th Army, right down to the most junior private soldier.
If we had the same gang of idiots leading us as led us through the last 3 years, things were liable to come adrift.
Great point to remember is that we are going to finish with this chap Rommel once and for all.
The significance of Alamein was that if the Germans got through, they would get through to the oil in the Middle East, and they would be able to form a complete circle, get round into Turkey, and they'd have another front to open up onto the Russians from the south. I can't remember anybody feeling dejected. If we was lucky, we'd pull through, and if we wasn't lucky, we wouldn't.
The sun has set. Soon the ground will be studded with lanterns, marking a pathway through the darkness towards the German lines. Victor will be at the very front of the advance, chugging through the dust on a small armoured carrier. For now, he strains his eyes. There is nothing to see yet. A slaughterhouse with the lights switched off. A fine drizzle begins to fall and the wind rises. Above, a chandelier falls silently into the night. An enemy flare. Everything beneath it is stained a deep blood red, and the men roll forwards.
I was in a carrier, and we'd just lost a track. A track had been blown off, and that meant that the three of us had to get out, get the track, put a spare link in it, bash the spare link, and get the thing mobile again. All this time, there's bullets flying around, there's mortar shells landing, there's mayhem. So we get back in the carrier. We're feeling quite good now because we're still alive.
An alien sound. It threads its way between the cracks and booms. Discordant, as though the cries of the men are being stretched and warped by the heat of the battle. Victor turns, and there, amidst the clattering din, a figure steps out from a cloud of churned dust and smoke. A boy, lit up by the sporadic flashes of the guns. He marches on, in a trance, and then disappears.
This lone sod playing his bagpipe, going straight forward, on his own, and behind him, all his mates, all these Scotch lads behind him. And that was a sight for sore eyes, that was, to see a lad doing that sort of thing. Because I'm almost sure he got his lot.
When I leave this world behind me, to another I will go. And if there are no pipes in heaven, I'll be going down below. The friends in time we severed, someday we will meet again. I'll return to leave you, never be a piper to the end.
He disappears into the fog and the smoke and all his mates and then you hear the rattle of the gunfire and stuff like that, and you hear all the noise. He hasn't got no officer's pips on or anything like that, no sergeant stripes.
This has been a day to die for. Now the day is almost done. seabird turns to face the setting sun. If friends in time be severed, someday here we'll meet again. I'll return to leave you never, be a piper to the end.
He was leading them, that's part. It must have put the shits up the Germans, I know that.
This is only the first of many battles at El Alamein. And between the fighting, long gaps where platoons sit in their pits, wiping sweat from their eyes and beating away the damned flies which swing about the addled heads of the living, and greedily dive-bomb the dead. On the fourth night, the riflemen become lost in the dark and mistakenly pitch up in the very heart of a German outpost. For a few hours the two sides sleep side by side, as innocently and peacefully as children, until morning.
In the first light, we were on this little rise, 12, 14 feet, and when we put our heads over the rise, there was all these Germans eating their breakfast and stuff like that. Didn't know we were there.
It is as though the riflemen, hiding behind their ridge, have lifted a rock and found a nest of insects beneath it.
These Germans, they scuttling away. No other word for it. Scuttling away. 200 or 300 yards. So then it all started. It was mainly, it was tanks and infantry. Their tanks approached, and of course they went up in smoke straight away. And then they sent another lot, and they went up in smoke. So they send the infantry in. They're all dead. They never got anywhere near us. It was just a lot of lead flying around, a lot of bombs, a lot of bullets. You don't know what's going to happen in the next minute. You haven't got a clue. All you hope for is that if it happens, it's going to happen quick.
Somewhere in the enemy lines, a German mortar is dropped into the nozzle of its launcher. With a thump, it zips almost vertically into the air. For a second it hangs, high above the battle, looking down on two identical lines of men, and then it plummets to earth. The mortar's pointed nose hits the ground only a short way down the line from Victor and explodes, sending out a horizontal, razor-sharp disc of torn metal. Only one of the soldiers in the position is left alive. A boy who has, for days, been thumped and threatened and terrified beyond his sanity.
He got his Bren gun in best Hollywood style and starts rushing towards the Germans. He didn't get very far, did he?
He's cut down almost instantly. And then the most extraordinary thing happens. The battle lulls, and a German soldier stands up. He walks out into the open, watched by both sides, edging closer to where the boy fell. He kneels beside the crumpled body and fiddles with its torn clothes. After a few moments, he stands again and walks to the middle of the battlefield. In the silence, he lifts his hand into the air. He holds it there for a moment, and then places the boy's possessions on the ground for his friends to collect.
Nobody fired a shot. One bloke must have said over there, God, let's take these blokes' things back, you know. What, you're going to chance it? Yeah, they won't shoot if I hold up a bit of white. Because you've got to the stage then that you don't kill for the sake of killing. You kill when it's necessary. It did go on. There were these moments of sanity.
Only moments, mind you. Too much sanity, and no one will win. Soon the guns are firing again. It is many hours before they rest. And then the attack is over, and the British troops are left alone.
About 11 o'clock, the word went round and we took all the bolts out of the stuff, anything we couldn't carry. Got back to our own lines like that.
What was your thought at the end of that, after everything you've been through?
Fall down and sleep. That's the truth. Just fell down and collapsed. We just laid on the ground. It was raining, as usual. Pouring the rain. We just laid down and went to kip, soaking wet. In 2 days they'd re-equipped us and we was on our way again.
For Victor, El Alamein is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning. For the next 2.5 years, Victor's life becomes a blur of skirmishes, pitched battles and assassinations. By September 1944, his body is strong, but his mind has become brittle. And now we find him standing in line on a wind-blown airstrip, clutching a parachute to his chest. He doesn't know it, of course. None of the men know it. But there is very little chance of surviving the next battle. Most of them will be dead within a week. The plan is to drop into Holland, overrun the withered German defences, claim the Lower Rhine, march down to Berlin, and join up with the D-Day invaders to crush the fibrillated heart of Nazi Germany.
They really thought that they didn't have anything to worry about. They are the men who are born to rule. Everybody else is inferior to them. I've never been to Eton. I've read enough accounts about it and I've seen the idiots and the way they behave. You don't trust them because you know they're either telling lies or they really believe it's going to be a cakewalk.
Goodbye, old England. Please hold dear your absent sons.
We sat down and played cards on the floor. And one of the things to avoid is sitting down moping or thinking of the past or of the future which might not be there. You don't do that. I've never seen a bloke kneel down and pray because reality hits them. So we don't.
They don't think. They don't hope. They sit and wait.
The red light comes on. They take the doors off and then you all line up. And then the green light comes on and then you all rush forward then, en masse. You're only jumping, say, from 400, 450 feet. The world's going round as you're dropping. And there's quite a lot of wind being made artificially by the planes. You look down at the ground, see all the dead bodies going on the ground, see all the smoke, see all the tracer coming out, and you realise you're in trouble. Cakewalk theory's gone for a burn. Mayhem. Everything happens at lightning speed. You hit the ground and you lay down. And you lift your head up and have a look round. There's noise everywhere. You hear blokes screaming, you hear machine guns, you hear mortars crashing down, blokes shouting out, "Come on, Vic, over here." Some get wounded on the way. In this case, I think it was Starkey Williams who got hit in the leg. Paddy was there. Paddy landed on the machine gun post what shot Dargy. He nearly kicked one bloke's head right off his shoulders. That was just a mass of gore. He must have shot the other one. I can't remember now. But I know that there was only a young kid who was left, and he was crying his eyes out. So we left him there on his own. No, you don't feel pity for them. They're just a nuisance. It's more or less every man for himself. It's like Piccadilly Circus in the rush hour.
The troops have been dropped too far from the Arnhem Bridge, and the lightly armed paratroops are outgunned by a pack of German panzer tanks which weren't supposed to be there. The Nazis have their own grim name for Operation Market Garden.
Hexenkessel, the witch's cauldron. The fighting is getting more intense all the time as the Germans bring more in. By the time the third day had ended, you didn't have anything left. You'd eaten everything. So you got your rations where you could. Pick them up off dead bodies, I think. They were lying all over the place. German dead, English dead. Hundreds of them.
You've kind of described how when you're having to defend a position, the men running towards you stop being human because that's how you deal with it. I just wonder when they're on the ground and they're dead, do they become human again?
Well, you passed on to the next one then. Their history. By that time, you're a psychopath. You're not a normal person. You're killing your fellow men, and they're killing you. After the fourth day, of course, it was just a matter of hanging on. It was raining, it was pouring the rain. Terrible. Even the thickest of heads had realised that there was no future in it. You've got to accept the situation and make the best of it. You can't moan, you can't groan and moan and complain, and nobody to complain to.
The men are utterly exhausted. More than a week of ceaseless fighting. Nothing to eat, no sleep, just a diet of adrenaline and drugs.
The benzodrine they gave us, that kept us going. It's a drug, something like this drug they take when they go to dances these days. It begins with an E. What is it? Ecstasy, yeah. Sort of a sample of ecstasy. And of course a lot of the lads, some of them were shoving them into their mouth. They certainly work because you disregard a lot of what's going on. You don't give a damn sort of thing. You know, shit or bust. Yeah, get out. Get out.
Now, after 6 hopeless days, Victor and the few men left behind are slithering through the mud, dazed and starving and hunted.
What you do, you crawl about on your belly and you see nobody there, you crawl a bit further and you crawl a bit further. And eventually you say, well, you know, there can't be anybody now, I've left them all behind. That's the idea, so you get away, get back to England somehow. You don't know how you're going to do it. You haven't got a clue. You're weak, you really are. You're starving. You try to find somewhere and get away. Amsterdam was in the general direction. We didn't have a clue where Amsterdam was, but everything's done in slow motion. You're working on instinct.
Victor stays hidden for 2 days, and then, finally, it is over.
They just get above you and they've got a gun, haven't they? Come, Tommy, come, Tommy. Krieg is fertig. Must have looked a bloody sight, unshaven, unwashed, filthy dirty.
The German soldiers scrape him from the ground and throw him into a train which rocks and rolls across Germany to a prison camp on the outskirts of Dresden. It isn't uncomfortable. Oh no, the inmates have a Christmas tree and they have beer to drink. The guards are quite jovial and there's a wood-burning stove to keep them warm at night. Yet still, they plan their escape. No tunnels are required, no forged papers. The Germans, who march their men out to shovel snow from the roads, often leave them completely unguarded. So, one morning, Victor and his co-conspirators, Paddy, Billy and Tommy, simply saunter out of town.
We'd all prepared ourselves. We had spare blankets under our overcoats. We had grub what we'd saved from here, there and everywhere, matches which we'd saved. We knew the Czechoslovakian border wasn't all that far away, that's the point. So we thought if we can get to Czechoslovakia, we might be able to get away. The snow's about 3 or 4 feet deep. Once you get outside the town, we just kept walking through the next village. We still had our shovels over our shoulder, walked through that. Nobody stopped us. Your face is covered in snow and it really comes down out there, it really comes down. I mean, the snowflakes are, they're not like these potty little snowflakes we see here. Bloody great soup plates. You could be on the moon. There was absolutely nothing.
Their first night is spent in an abandoned railway cabin which grows spears of ice across its windows. Their second, under the frosted arches of a railway bridge. Just a few more hours, and they might finally be free.
We walked across this field, and we come to this line of bushes, and it was Billy again. He goes through it, and immediately falls down about 6 to 8 feet down a slope to a road. And there were these young boys, these Krauts, having a practice roadblock right where we landed out on the road. That was it. We'd had it.
They had made it to within 15 miles of the border. Now the escapees are transported back to the prison camp. There'll be no more snow shoveling for Kriegsgefangenen Gregg. Instead, he's put to work in a miserable soap factory.
You're freezing cold. The wind was blowing through it, the snow was blowing through it. It was unpleasant. You keep warm by working. That's the only way you can keep warm, by shoveling this stuff into the barrow and then pushing it up the ramp into the mouth of this whacking great mixer machine, which took up the complete side of the shed. It was an enormous thing.
Victor piles barrow after barrow of soap powder into the gaping mouth of the machine. He shares his detestable new job with Harry, a rangy Yorkshireman with a brain even more addled than his own. One afternoon, when their minds are almost as numb as their fingers, they decide to play a prank. There's a pile of cement in the yard, which looks identical to soap powder. How could they resist?
We filled up, I think it was 3 or 4 wheelbarrows, big wheelbarrows of cement, up into the ramp and into the machine. The cement's all gone solid. What happened, all the wiring, the old wiring, which had been there donkey's years, caught alight in the roof. I should imagine the cement, the machinery was a write-off. Police come along, and as me and Harry was being driven away, the roof fell in a blaze of sparks and fire.
The Germans fail to see the funny side as they watch their factory explode and collapse. And as Victor and Harry are driven away in a van, they can hear the not-so-distant thumps of Russian artillery. They are taken to a smart, dimly lit room. Hitler's portrait hangs on the wall behind a huge desk. The two men wait nervously, and then the door swings open.
This bloke walks in, dressed up to the nines in his uniform, big black uniform, black coat, jack boots. Yeah, he was a big boy, and he had the death's head thing up here, the sort of skull and whatever it was, you know. They used to have what they called a death's head badge. Sabotage, sabotage. And Harry's making it worse, saying he can't understand him, and he's speaking in perfect English, absolute Oxford-bred English, and Harry's putting the knife in, saying, and I'm keeping my mouth shut. It's almost kicking him, telling him to shut his mouth up. How are we going to get out of this one? This is the part of the story where there's been a degree of levity. Like you can say that I've laughed my way through situations. We're now going into an era where everything is black now from now on. It's getting worse at the moment because the nightmares are returning. I'd considered all these memories dormant, and now they're even clearer than they were at the time after it happened. Possibly because I've got time to think about them.
Victor and Harry are marched through Dresden. The skies are wide open, a pure, unblemished blue. And below, the ancient streets bustle with people going about their ordinary lives, fulfilling their daily errands and chores.
Oh, it's beautiful. You wouldn't know there was a war on. It was like a Walt Disney gingerbread place with all these old-fashioned facades, roofs with fascias with all sorts of curves in. Quite a lot of the streets were still cobbled. The streets off of the main streets, they were very narrow. Some of them you could almost touch both walls. It probably was the jewel of European culture. The people of Dresden always considered the fact that if the Germans didn't bomb Oxford, then the British wouldn't bomb Dresden.
How could they ever have known? A murmuration of bloated metal warplanes gathers and circles above Reading. 244 of them, packed with more than 3,000 tons of explosives. Like starlings, they circle and cluster, and then move off towards the Channel. In Dresden, the SS officer shoves Victor in the back.
He wheeled us away to this building which was right in the centre of Dresden. This big brown building it was, with a big glass dome roof. There was no furniture in there except these big drums, what they use for excrement. It stunk to high heaven, it did, it really did. And there's all these people in there, 200 or 300 of them. Anybody who was in there was in there for the high jump. Lose all hope, all you were into here.
Dresden will be destroyed, systematically, in 3 precisely timed waves. Thunderclap, uppercut, hammer blow. 10 o'clock.
You hear the aircraft, it becomes a roar. And then all of a sudden you'll see these flares. And then when they get down to a certain level, they open up and they become like multi-flares. And they look like big Christmas trees coming down. They're just flares to guide the oncoming mass of the first wave in.
The magnesium incendiaries sprinkle the city with a galaxy of glowing red lights. Some smash through the glass dome far above Victor's head.
Some of the men were killed outright by the glass which come down on them. This glass came down like big spears. Just landed and pierced the blokes underneath. And then if the incendiary, what was inside them, this jelly-like stuff, come down and stuck on them, and you couldn't put it out. So these poor unfortunates, they were burnt to death, screaming. You couldn't do anything about it.
Now the planes drop their cargo. Small explosives to kill and maim. Huge 2-ton bombs to blast out roofs and create an airflow that will whip the fires into a frenzy. 200,000 incendiaries to strike 1 million matches under the kindling.
This whack-and-great bomb must have landed outside the building, and it blew all the wall in. You get this momentary flash, and you're aware a lot of this stuff flying through the air, and you just get picked up, as if something invisible has picked you up and throws you over the other side of the room. Bits of wood from the roof and the walls, that's all on top of you. By this time some of it's alight. So I find Harry, he's dead, so I do what I can for him, make him decent, put something over him, and then everybody else, the few that are left, make it for the outside. You're no longer a prisoner. You're no longer entombed. There is a way out now because the wall's been blown in. There's only fragments of the wall left standing. There's smoke and flame. You can't see the sky anymore. You're in the middle of a bonfire. You're stepping over bricks. You're stepping over what remained of a staircase. You're also aware that there's dead bodies lying everywhere. All you can do about it is to try and get out of the area. You're protecting yourself from rubble which is flying about, which is coming down from buildings. The flames would eat away at the timber at the bottom of the house. Whoosh, like that. And all the sparks with it. What saved me was the wooden clogs. What the Germans had given me to march through the snow. Because I was able to stand on the ground without my feet getting burnt. And a lot of people wasn't in that state. Their feet were burning. And there they are, they're out in the open with their kids and things like that hanging on to them and running out of their collapsing houses, trying to find some sort of shelter, safety. They're not screaming. The women are too busy trying to look after their kids and they'll protect their brood. Women are like this, they do this. They'll put themselves in danger to protect their kids. Or they'll put themselves in front, like if the ground's boiling hot, they'll lay on the ground and put the children on top of them. Terrible scenes. And all these situations, they're going, flashing through your mind. You couldn't find a way out.
Above ground, an inferno. Below, an ant's nest of cellars, tunnels and air raid shelters crammed with thousands upon thousands of people hiding from the storm. But the heat has turned each and every one of them into an oven. The largest bunker sits underneath the railway station.
There was 5,000 people in that shelter when they locked the doors. And they were all roasted alive. Just ordinary civilians. Not a soldier amongst them. Women, children and old people.
Smoke rises 15,000 feet into the air, and the volcano can be seen 60 miles away. Now, the second wave arrives. 529 bombers drop another 1,800 tons of explosives into the flames.
Living in the second wave was entirely different than living in the first wave. That was only a sort of a hors d'oeuvre. The sirens went again. That's when people started panicking. Because that's when people started to look for shelter where there wasn't any. All you could do was to lay in down amongst the rubble and hope for the best. That's all you could do. Nowhere to hide. Everything caught alight then, everything. Dries all your skin up, you get blisters, your hair goes all brittle, your clothes become very brittle. And that's when these tornadoes really started to come in. Couldn't stand up against them. The wind must have been at terrific speeds. If you were, say, 300 yards away from a fire, then you could stand up. But if there's anything nearer than that, the wind just swept you into it, and you couldn't even hold on to anything because it was like a suction pulling you in to the centre of this enormous great fire. And then before you reached it, it would suck you up in the air like a bloody great mushroom, and they'd disappear amongst the smoke. I've seen people alight being sucked up. When you see a woman and a kid with all her hair light and her clothes alight, flying up in the air, she holding on to a little baby. I've seen that. I've seen people swept up into the air. Yeah, that's what turns your brain. If you think about it for too long, you're never going to recover. The whole experience is an experience of, say, flashes which last about 6 or 7 seconds. There's no aim to anything. It was hell.
The sun rises. 4-story walls stand like gravestones, casting long shadows across the smoking rubble. Somehow, Victor has managed to stumble his way to the outskirts of the city, and now he looks back. Almost everything is gone. And then the sound of more planes. The third wave of bombings carried out by the Americans pounds the rubble into a fine dust. When the last brick has been crushed, the planes depart, and Victor is ordered to help clear the dead.
That's when you see the ghastly things that you saw. That's when that's what really turns you. Everything else which has gone on before become a sort of a sideshow as to what happens to your mind when all these bodies are uncovered. And that's when the true impact, that's the real horror. You're digging with a gang of men, and then you uncover a shelter, and you see what the remains of what's left underneath it, and then you have to drag it all out and put it by the side of the road in a pile. And there's quite a lot of blokes couldn't do that. They were quite unable to do it. You smell them as you get near to it. Burning flesh is terrible. When you pull those bricks aside and open up that door which leads to the cellar, then you know what you're going to find inside it. They might have just been suffocated and died through lack of oxygen. Their bodies might have melted, just all that's left is a load of fat. It's clothing and bones. So you don't know how many people were there. You can say, right, I picked up 6 skulls, there must have been 6 people. No way really of knowing. The streets were lined with shriveled bodies after a week. You couldn't really describe them as human beings. You'd get grown men shrivel up to very tiny peoples, about 3 foot. Anybody under 3 years of age would probably have just disappeared from sight. I'm sorry, but if it sounds gruesome, that's what it is.
Victor clears the bodies for 5 days, and then he has finally had enough. He walks out to the east, swooping and lolling like the Egyptian flies. And as he sees the Russian tanks approaching, he drops to the ground like a rock.
I was so tired. I was really tired.
There are voices in the halls, there are whispers in the walls. Come on, boys, it's graduation day, and the ghost of 39 will be slipping across the line, singing now. It's graduation day.
You get on the train, get outside, and walk home.
After it's all over, and Jimmy's in his room, and cast your eyes to Dover, and there's only a blue moon. Many hands upon the wheel, men of iron, men of steel, rolling home. Where else do you wanna be? Let the memory never fade of the price that has been paid for tomorrow, when the world is free.
Everybody was laughing and joking, you see, because the war was over. I wasn't. I was miserable because I'd seen too much. you're probably only half human. I never lose that sense of guilt. Never. Ultimately, the man who presses the button is the man who commits the sin. What I do know is that I'm not very proud of my life.